In this lesson, we're going to learn about using an alpha pass. Okay, so in our last lesson, we learned how to mask an image. And we learned that the outside of the mask, in our case, became transparent. And that's the key of an alpha channel. You're going to have some areas that are transparent and some areas that remain opaque. So how do you get an alpha channel? Well, there's a couple of different ways to make them. You can make one yourself inside of After Effects, maybe if you're doing a motion graphics piece, or if you're in a 3D application, a separate alpha pass can actually be rendered out for you. And whenever they're not rendered out as part of the color information, we have to assemble them together here in After Effects. So this is a very vital part of a compositor's workflow. So let's get started and figure out how to use this alpha pass. So first, to use it, we need to have our color image. So come over here to your Photos folder and grab your shipcolor.jpg, and we'll just drop that right on top of the robot here in our stacking order on the timeline. So what you can see here is an image of our ship, and it's been rendered out with a background. So when it was rendered, they rendered the whole thing right out of the 3D software, and now we don't have any kind of transparency because of this background. I want to have a transparent background because I want to be able to make it look like this helicopter crashed into that sinkhole we made in our last lesson. So we can use that ship_alpha to actually cut the ship out of the background. So what we'll do is grab the alpha and place it on top of the ship color. And you can see how they overlap and how we have black and white pixels. So the black pixels tell After Effects that we want that area to be transparent, and the white pixels we want to be opaque. Now we can choose a few different choices here for the way that it uses those, but typically alpha is perceived as white being visible and black being transparent, but you can reverse it actually if you need to. So to be able to use this, we have to use our track matte functionality. So that is going to be located in the other type that we have down here. So we've got switches and modes, so you want to click that to toggle over to your modes. So you want to be able to see these options here. So the first thing to pay attention to is your stacking order. And we actually already have that right. We have the alpha on top of the color, which is the way that you need to have it set up, because the color is what's going to control the track matte. So this color has this drop down right here that says track matte, and it defaults to having no track matte. But if we open that up, you see we have these 4 choices. So we'll get slightly different results based on whichever one of these we choose. In my case, I'm going to want to use a Luma Matte because I want that inner part that's white to remain visible, and I want the outer part that's black to become transparent. So I'll click that, and you'll see that it automatically used the information in the alpha pass to cut the ship out of the background. Now if I move it, you'll see that we still have that hole being created by the alpha, and the ship basically it's almost as if it is moving behind that hole we've created. So I'm going to hit Control Z to undo that, and we want to go ahead and pre-compose these 2 layers together so that we have one helicopter layer to work with, or ship, whatever you want to call it. So we'll Shift select both of those layers. We'll hit Control Shift C, and let's call this ship. And we'll go ahead and say OK. And now we can move this layer around with its transparency however we like. So let's go ahead and get this positioned in our background. First of all, I want this behind my robot. So I'll move that down in the stacking order. And I'm going to turn the robot off for a moment so I'm just looking at the ship. Okay, so I want the ship to kind of go down into this hole, but obviously the hole is a lot farther back than I can really make this ship look like it is. So I'm going to grab the corner of the ship up here and hold shift to scale that down uniformly, just like this. So we'll make it a little bit smaller and then kind of place it over here. Maybe make it a little bit bigger than that. And also, I think it'd be nice to kind of rotate this down. So I'm going to come up here and grab my rotation tool up at the top. And we'll rotate this kind of in this direction here. If you want to see what the values are changing to, you can grab the ship and open up that transform. And we can see that our rotation right now is at negative 15.3. So if you feel like that's maybe a little too far, you can back it up a little bit, and just maybe right in there. And my position I feel like is pretty good. I could probably move it forward just a bit though. Okay, so I have basically set up this helicopter to be in the view of my street here, but if I move the stacking order to try to get this to look like it's down in the hole, we'll do that. It doesn't really work. It looks like it's behind the hole. So what we need to do, move that back, is to actually create a mask for this layer that we can then use to make it look like this piece is down in the hole. And this is where pre-composing is really important, because if we only created a mask on, let's say, our color layer, we might have an issue with it working properly with the alpha channel, or if we'd only created the mask on the alpha channel. It's just better to pre-comp those images together, and then we only have to worry about one mask on one layer. Okay? So let's actually turn the opacity of the ship down so I can see the edge of the sinkhole, and then we'll be able to turn it back up after we're finished drawing our mask. So this is a technique that I like to do anytime I need to see through an image but still be able to see the image somewhat. So we'll toggle that open and we'll just take the opacity down a little bit, just like that. Okay? And then let's grab our pen tool, still having that ship layer selected, and we'll just start coming in here and finding that front edge that we want to have. So right in here is where the front edge of our hole is, and that's where the helicopter would begin to appear, coming like it's coming out of the hole. And I need to zoom in. If you want to zoom in on a specific area instead of just rolling your mouse wheel, you can hold Alt while you roll your mouse wheel and it will zoom to wherever your cursor is. Now here I maybe want a little bit more of a curved line, so I'm going to left click and drag to pull out those handles for that Bezier shape now. Okay, then I'll middle click to kind of pan over, maybe zoom out a little bit. We'll get a little bit more of a curve in here. So this one's kind of more important for it to be precise than we were originally masking out. Now in this case, I've kind of reached an area where drawing this mask is difficult because I pulled out those handles, but now if I want to move up here, you'll see this doesn't really make the right shape. So what I can do, I'm going to undo that a couple of times, is I'll do the same thing, but before I let go of my mouse here, I'm going to hold down the Alt key, and then I can point this handle in whatever direction I want. So I'm going to point it in the direction I want to draw, which is right up and over that curve. So now I'll be able to draw that in the right direction. Again, I need to go up again, so I'm going to hold Alt. We'll point it in that direction. And then we can start really easily and quickly using the Alt to adjust the way that that mask is pointing. Okay, so you see there's a gun coming out of the ship here, so we need to make sure we get far enough away with our mask to cover that up. And we're not going to actually see the crash So it's fine. You can just have that as big as you need to down here. And then I'll just close the mask by clicking that first point. And now we run into an interesting problem. The way that our mask is defaulting is that we always see what's inside of the mask. So I could have drawn the mask so that this part down here came up above the helicopter, but if you don't do that, there's a really quick and easy fix if you drew it in the kind of opposite of the way that it is looking. You see how it's opposite. The outside of the mask is what we actually want to see here. So what I do is I'll toggle down this mask, and instead of having the mask set to add, I'll change it to subtract. And now we can see that that mask is basically covering up the area that we don't want to see the bottom of our helicopter. And then we'll just come down here and turn our opacity back up on the ship. And if I grab my selection tool and just left click to deselect, it really starts to look like there is a helicopter in this hole in the ground. So we can turn back on our robot, and things are coming together really nicely for our composite. Now, it's true that that helicopter is moving along with the road in the way that our robot used to, but eventually we'll fix all of these issues with tracking in the same way that we did our robot. But we have so many other things to incorporate into our scene, like rubble and fire, that will be kind of addressing all of those tracking issues at once in a later lesson. So don't worry about that moving strangely right now. We'll take care of it together later on. But in our next lesson, we are going to learn how to create a difference mat and how to continue using masks in interesting ways by using a garbage mask. So I'll show you what a garbage mask is, and then also how to create a difference mat in the next lesson. Now this is going to be really exciting because it involves an explosion. So stick around and we'll start creating the explosion that happens when this helicopter catches on fire in the next lesson.